disclaimer for this video. 1. I have animals. Animals are gonna be animals and they're gonna be disrupting the video occasionally. 2. Possible mention of political opinions. And I'm one of those people that is just like, okay, you like so-and-so? Okay, cool. Do what you think is best, and I really don't care. I vote for who I think is right, and I usually agree to disagree, and I usually don't bully my friends about it. The only difference is if you are openly an asshole to me about my opinions, that's where I draw the line. And I never thought I'd have a friend openly, break off a friendship just because of said opinions. Yeah, I'm exposing an ex-friend, but not in the way you think. More so in a story sense, and how I learned my lesson. To be fair, I'm not going to be saying certain names, and I'm going to give you the beginning of the end kind of summary. So I'm going to do my best to, give you the gist of the situation. I did, however, try to find the Facebook post where it happened, and since a bunch of links back from COVID got erased because new information and all this other stuff were being found out around the time, it's interesting because, I couldn't find it. Second of all, I also tried to find the post, backwards searching it because of the person, and didn't go so well. But I did try to find the messages too, and since the person blocked me over said opinions, just take my words with a grain of salt because I do not have the receipts. So this is going to be an interesting story. COVID, am I right? COVID. Now, of course, I'm not going to be here to educate you on what you should do on COVID. Do yourself a favor, just do what you think is safe. I literally work at a pharmacy and I hear new things all day. My boss is literally hearing new things about monkeypox all day. So I'm just sitting there like, okay, are we getting vaccines for monkeypox? And my boss is like, I have no fucking clue. So, let me get started. Now, in March of 2022, around that time, 2022? Shit. 2020, I meant. In March of 2020, that's when I was still in college, I was working on my final stuff of school, and I was petitioning to graduate. Holy shit, that seems like a long time ago, and I'm looking at my degree, and I'm like, holy shit. Anywho, I was working on my stuff, and it was my first semester of my last year of college. Ooh, boy. So to continue, things get real interesting. And by interesting, I mean dicey, because March is where the slicey dicey of everything and COVID burst into flames. Just imagine being a time traveler and you walk in with the pizza and everything's on fire. That's when that happened. Now, my state is one of the states that took things really seriously. Not California level, but almost to California. And we were having fines if certain places of, I want to say businesses and certain areas didn't have certain things that were adequate enough for regulation. And if these regulations were not met, they were seen with outrageous fucking fines. Now, in my opinion, I think these fines were a little outrageous because they were expected to do this within a week. Okay. As soon as they would release new information on COVID, they'd be like, okay, this is an airborne illness, make sure you do this, within a week, and we're sending health inspectors everywhere. And all these small businesses are sitting here like, how do we get the supplies for this? Like, you're praying that people got plexiglass and all this stuff laying around. And I got some of the stories from my coworkers at my current work being like, yeah, so we had to hope to God we had some of this stuff. And this is coming from one of the local businesses that is also, I wouldn't say like a chain, but it's a local chain. Now, where my mom works is like a local, small, like tiny business. It's like a little general store, and I literally live above it. So you can tell how tiny this thing is. And I'm not saying that it's tiny on the scale where it's like they wouldn't be able to afford some of this, but they wouldn't be able to afford fine after fine if they couldn't handle some of this stuff, you know what I mean? So they couldn't get the information fast enough because they weren't sending out this information fast enough to businesses for them to regulate some of this stuff. And on top of that, you had local Karens sending out, phone call after phone call to the health inspectors and, all this other stuff saying, oh, so-and-so business is not putting up their plexiglass, and I saw someone without a mask walk into so-and-so's business. Ugh. And they were only putting in these phone calls just to be petty, because they didn't get a cookie. And I'm being serious, because my mom used to tell me interesting stories of these interactions with people. Don't get me started on Christmas downstairs. Oh my god. But this doesn't even start the half of it. I'd be researching things for school. I think one of my last classes was my final psychology exam, and I'd be researching things for my last paper, which was on veterans' mental health and all this other stuff. And some of the advertisements I would get were stuff for COVID. Of course, there was an update on the COVID regulations on making sure if people had masks over their noses, over their face, and basically making sure people were covering their noses. Because God forbid. Now this was getting into April. The only reason I remember this incident happening around April, because my birthday is in April. Aries, baby. Interesting, huh? Now, as all these things are going on, I tagged my mom in a Facebook post. I love how my brain likes to combine these words. And I tried explaining to her, hey, can you share this with your boss and make sure everything's up to date? Because I really don't want you guys getting fined for something this stupid. Of course, since they were a tiny local business, literally the health inspectors did not give a shit because they were not fining them over stupid things like Karens calling over a cookie. This is hilarious because this is a true story. I'll have to ask my mom about the details on that one, actually. But, to continue. So I sent the post via Facebook, tagged my mom in it, and said, here, can you show this to Georgia? My mom, goes, thank you, I'll show Georgia. And this is a beautiful, beautiful interaction. Now, a former friend of mine, we'll call her Blair. Because that's as close as we're getting to her name without saying her name. And Blair decides to, pull the interesting "you're a sheep" comment. Note to self, like I said, if you're doing whatever you think is safe during the pandemic, that's on you. I could care less. I'm doing what I think is safe. I mask up. I got my shots. We're good. We're Gucci. Thank you. Now, on the other hand, we also have situations where people were just being outrageous. Like, it was beyond crazy because we have the rural areas here in my state, and we have the urban areas, which you can obviously tell the difference, who did what, and of course the urban areas they were touched too, and they were very influenced because now I obviously thought that my rural area was going to be very strictly no mask, but I stand corrected considering we did have a lot of older people here, and I was just like, wow, I'm very surprised, impressed, and surprised. Bravo. Now, my former friend, Blair, just keeps going, saying you're a sheep, why would you share such a thing? Like, doesn't my opinion matter to you? All this other stuff, and I'm like, excuse me? And it's getting to the point where I'm like, whoa, why are you attacking me on my post where I was just trying to show my mom something for downstairs? A business? I'm very confused. Even my friend Kira stepped in and my mom stepped in, like, bitch, step off. Like, come on, calm down. There's no reason, because even my mom's not a huge fan of the mask rule, and my mom's like, yeah, just calm down. I may not like it, but, some people like to stay safe. It's okay. We all make our bed and sleep in it. Of course, everything gets interesting. Because then it doesn't even turn into the mask argument. It turns into an argument of, for a while now, you haven't been a good friend. Just because I didn't either want to hang out with her, or I basically called her out on a lot of bullshit. The first bullshit I called her out on was A, she can't make plans to save her fucking life. And the one time I can't make plans because, oh, I'm busy because I'm doing college work. suspicious apparently. But I called her out basically saying, like, you can't make plans worth a shit because every time it's either last minute plans or you can never find a babysitter. That's on you. If you decide to have kids, do you realize there are repercussions with having kids? I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to have kids. Of course, I don't want to have kids. But if you want to have kids, do realize that you either find a babysitter or you can even bring the kid along if your friends are alright with it. I would have been okay with her bringing the kid along. Yes, I'm not the hugest fan of children, but her kid is not a bad behaved kid. Her kid was very well mannered, even in restaurants. Like, Jesus. Yes, sometimes she can be a little fussy, but what kid isn't? I don't know if this is just my growth showing, considering I've been babysitting and I'm now working in, like, retail. I'll just say retail in quotations, because a pharmacy, I don't know if we consider it retail, because we also work with, like, all sorts of different things. But we'll just push that to the side. But we'll just continue. It was really interesting because she was making it all about her, the argument of apparently I hurt her in some way, and I was very concerned because I was just like, if you had a problem with me, why don't you just, come to me? And I pretty much said, I was just like, if you're just gonna rant at me and you're not going to listen, I'm just gonna block you and move on. And talk to me when you're fucking ready. Well, that wasn't gonna happen because basically she went to my boyfriend at the time and said, she blocked me! Yeah, that was fun. Remember, guys and gals, apparently if you have a boyfriend that's friends with your, friend, it gets interesting. Hi, kitty. Of course, at the time, said friend is just like, oh my god, she blocked me, screeching. And she also screeches at my other friend, Kira. Kira's just like, lol, you've been a bitch since you married so-and-so. I could give a rat's ass. But my other friend... I'll get into this in a second. Said boyfriend starts going, I would say, on a mini tirade with me, saying, how could you do this? Why are you, like, blocking Blair? This is ridiculous. It was her opinion. And so I was like, I didn't block her over her opinion. I blocked her over her being a bitch. Like, she went into my DMs going on this mini tirade on how she couldn't, one, control me anymore, apparently. How I wasn't a good friend no more. All this other bullshit. It was weird as hell. And I told her, basically, if she couldn't, be an adult, I'm not gonna listen. And I know how petty I can be sometimes, but what the shit was that? Now, my boyfriend at the time is best friends with Blair's husband. So this is probably why he's taking certain sides. And he was just like, well, you guys need to make up and all this other stuff. And I was like, hold on, you just don't move on from a fight like that. Now, I may be petty. And I know I can be petty. But she hurt me first. And I think she should apologize first. Now, I could be the bigger person. But if you start a fight, I think you should end the fight. It's pretty bad of me having to block her so she would shut her fucking mouth. Of course, she didn't shut her fucking mouth because literally my birthday a few days later, she goes to Walmart and shit talks me to my friend Kira. And my friend Kira tells me, and my boyfriend of the time decides to tell me, oh, Kira's just trying to stir the pot. Are you sure Kira's not the problem? Bitch, hold up. You're saying Kira's the problem when I could trust Kira with my life. Bitch, she was there for the sweet tea incident of Jersey in 2017. Bitch. Like, me and Kira are thick as thieves, and there's a reason why me and Kira are thick as thieves, and Blair was tossed to the fucking curb like a $2 hooker. No offense to hookers. I have respect for hookers. I literally was just like, I am tired of her disrespecting me just because of certain situations. A great example of Yee's zipping past my window. A great example of her greatest disrespects was back in when I was dating my one ex-boyfriend. She would always make nudges saying, oh, long-distance relationships don't exist. If you're dating them online, it doesn't exist. But then I was supposed to believe her when she was dating someone online, and I was like, Isn't this interesting? It's kind of hilarious that where there's a lot of hypocrisy in one person. On top of that, when we tried to tell her her one boyfriend was trying to ask us for nudes, she was just like, oh, that's impossible. And then what do you know? Isn't this interesting? Because he asked me, he asked Kira, and he also asked a friend of ours named Tiffany. Which I'm very tempted to make a video on Tiffany. But Tiffany literally is just a long story. Answer that. When I tried to explain that Blair had a lot of hypocrisies, it was very, interesting, considering that the boyfriend of the time, considering he still held his ground and tried to defend Blair with every inch of his being, and I'm just sitting there like, yeah, this makes no sense to me. And honestly, that's not even the last of the Blair situation. Because for a year onward, I pretty much just ignored Blair's existence. But the boyfriend would lie for Blair. Yeah. My own boyfriend. But let's continue, shall we? Because I feel like a petty bitch today. Thank you, Nickelback. So let's continue. So basically, a year later, I've gotten somewhat comfortable being around Blair, but not close enough to Blair where I'll be friends. Cats. And of course, Blair was explaining a vacation where we all were all at a get-together, and she tried to say that I was invited on this said vacation if I had the money to spend. Now, at the time, I didn't have this current job that I have. And I was like, oh, sure. I'm pretty sure I could raise the funds doing a couple of adopts, doing a couple of things, a couple of commissions. Because at the time, I will admit, I make a lot of money with a couple of commissions. If people are willing to pay that amount. And if me and said boyfriend at the time were going to share a room, it'd be easy. But then they explained to us that they wanted all of us to share a room. And like, what's the point of a vacation? What? Because it's a family vacation. So they explained the vacations at some sort of water park and all this other stuff as we're at the table, and I'm like, okay, sounds fun. I mean, I'll have to decide, because at the time, it was also at the same time as my family vacation, where we go to visit my family in the state of Indiana, and I was like, okay, maybe. I'll have to see about that. So I'm taking a look at my plans. I talked to my mom, and I was just like, I don't think I'm able to go. And she's just like, yeah, that's about the same time we're going to see your grandma. And I'm like, yeah. So I told my boyfriend at the time, I was just like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to go. Because, you know, family priority. I haven't seen my grandma in a while. And no offense, I got some hilarious stories from that vacation. That was interesting. So, here's where things do get interesting. So we all went to dinner. His family and I. We go to our local restaurant. And, penne vodka, yes. And his mom goes and she's just basically like, you should tell her. And I'm like, tell me what? And she's just like, you were never invited on that trip. And I was like, excuse me? Now, keep in mind, this could probably be me mixing things up, so take this with a grain of salt. So that means I would have probably paid for something I was never able to go on, or I would have raised all this money and just had money and not able to go on any sort of trip ever. I'm very confused. Now, sitting at the table, I'm like, hold on a second, I was never invited? And she's just like, yeah, so Blair basically came up to me and told me that she didn't want you to go on the trip. I'm like, okay, well, why didn't she tell me? Because I would have been okay with that, because, you know, I'm getting a little tired of this two-faced lying shit. But at the same time, I was getting a little frustrated because it's just like, at the same time, my boyfriend kept lying for Blair and Blair's husband. And in this case, I've always had a problem with Blair's husband, but Blair's husband didn't do anything. So Matt, if you ever see this video, I had no problem with you on this one. Thank you. Because Because this wasn't a Matt problem, this was a Blair. And I kind of sat there and I was just like, okay, so I was never invited because she didn't want me on the trip. But then why extend the invitation to me and say I should raise money for the room? I'm concerned. It's either, like, I was very concerned because of one of two things, like I said. I was just like, either I was going to raise the money, give them for the room, which then that means they scammed me. But I don't see Matt doing that. I'll say his name because he didn't do anything wrong. Or I would have just had money laying around and have been like, oh, I didn't go on the trip. Yay. I was just very fucking confused. And on top of everything, he literally told his mom, why would you say that? No, why would you say that? I was gonna tell her. And I'm just sitting there like, when? When I was on vacation? Or when we were alone and you could corner me? Because I felt like he would always wait into those situations where I would be alone. And I just didn't like that. I really didn't. Because sometimes I will admit, I felt fucking crazy sometimes. I'd talk about a situation that I didn't like and he'd be like, oh, you're just overreacting. I don't know what you're, freaking out about it. But do understand, behind the scenes, there were other things that you didn't know about. For example, Blair was manipulative as hell. Matt, no offense, he's just a dumbass, and sometimes my issues with him, though a little bit petty, I really didn't have much of an issue to begin with, because sometimes he was just a dipshit. I would just get irritated with his dipshitness. But you defending him for no goddamn reason at all confused me. And I get the whole bros before hoes kind of bullshit. But Jesus Christ. And even my IRL friend to this day, Logan, who was your best friend to begin with, or one of your best friends, was like, dude, what the fuck? Everyone was like, what the fuck? With everyone very concerned on how anyone could have defended that petty behavior. So, to summarize this video, y'all stand up for yourselves. Because I know with my anxiety and everything, I don't like stress because of my seizures. But bitch, sometimes it's worth it. So I hope you guys learned a lesson from this video. It was an interesting dark path. Luckily I got away from that boyfriend. Bye bitch. Luckily I got away from that bad friend. Bye bitch. And I pray maybe Matt will learn in the future. Goodbye for now.